The UK is an island nation. Our lifeline to the world is the sea. Tankers transport fuel, container ships bring us essential supplies, and cruise liners carry holidaymakers near and far. But who are the faces behind these fleets? Meet the Merchant Navy. The Merchant Navy is made up of over 1 million seafarers worldwide. They travel the oceans to bring us everything we find on our high streets. From captain down to the newest recruits, working on commercial ships requires serious commitment.
I hope I can do a good job and I don't mess up too much.
On cruise liners, passengers are the priority. While these floating cities entertain and enthrall, it's the officers and crew who ensure everyone arrives at each destination safely.
I love being at sea. There's never a day that goes by you don't learn anything. That's what I like about this job.
There's one commodity brought to us by merchant ships almost nobody could live without: crude oil. It makes everything from jet fuel and petrol to plastics and cosmetics.
Without the oil that we move around the place, there's not a lot that would happen. A lot of power stations, a lot of refineries would obviously shut down. The world probably would grind to a halt.
This is the British Progress. She's one of 700 supertankers devoted to moving oil around the world.
The British Progress is a double-hulled, very large crude carrier capable of carrying in excess of 2 million barrels of crude oil.
Soaring oil prices make this ship's payload in excess of $260 million. Bearing the burden of this cargo are 29 officers and crew under Captain Tim Johnston.
Progress control 1 and 2, coming astern now on the engine.
Their voyage, departing Singapore in the Far East for a 2-week passage to Iraq to pick up a full load of oil. The ship will head through the Malacca Straits and across the Indian Ocean past Sri Lanka, up towards Oman into the Persian Gulf, and finally on to Basra. The journey begins with Chief Officer Rob Jackson.
OK, Rad, bring her up.
Yeah, Brad.
Progress bridge, that's...
Sighted and clear.
Sighted and clear, thank you.
A local pilot who knows the waters inside out will guide the captain out of this, the busiest port in the world.
My main role is safety navigation. I'm watching where we're going, what the pilot's doing, are the guys on the bridge getting back into the groove with the navigation side of it and position fixing.
With traffic entering and leaving the port from all sides, this vessel needs room to manoeuvre.
What's that behind him? Is that tug and tow going the same way as us, is it? Oh, he's put his foot down now, hasn't he? Crossing ahead of us now. We've got the tide pushing us backwards, and we're less than a quarter of a mile away from the ships behind us. So it's all a matter of timing. If you can time it right, which is virtually what we've done now, you slip into a pocket and you can head west at the same speed as everybody else.
But it can all change in an instant.
But this guy's taking liberties with our generosity. This container ship has just come out. So we slowed down, which gives us more time to decide what we're going to do, and also it gives him time to speed up, as these ships pick up speed very fast.
Huge ships like the British Progress need to keep their distance from other shipping. They take over 2 miles to make an emergency stop.
We should have a relatively quiet run down and round the corner, and we're on our way.
As they head out to sea, the routine of ship's life starts all over again.
Most people prefer to be at sea when we're on a ship. We can work at our own pace. Sometimes we'll be busy and sometimes not so busy, and it's just nice that we've got the balance where we can do what we want.
You can travel for weeks without seeing other ships land. Some people find it very isolating, but I think it's kind of nice to just, cut off from back home and all the stress and worries.
The British Progress makes regular deep-sea voyages between Iraq and the USA. She's often at sea 5 weeks at a time between picking up and dropping off her oil. For officers, a tour of duty lasts around 4 months. For their crew, it's 9 months or more. Before the ship loads up on this trip, Chief Officer Rob Jackson needs to check the cargo tanks are ready.
This tank on its own holds around about 30,000 tonnes of crude oil. It's just one of 17 on board, this being one of the largest ones. The only noise you can hear at the moment is the gas freeing fan. We have to have the tanks ventilated in order to come down here. If it weren't for that, it would be absolutely stony silent down here. All the oil for loading comes through a drop line and into this pipeline and then filters off into the respective tanks. And then it's the same for when we come to discharge it. We actually suck it through these lines. Coming down the cargo tanks, you can get sort of quite overawed by it all, the size of it and sheer space that's involved. If you get the sun in the right place and you get all the lightning holes open on deck, it can be like looking through a cathedral. It's so huge and so vast, except we don't have the choir voice. We've had a good final inspection of this tank now, and everything's satisfactory. I'm well pleased with it all. The trouble is we don't know what will happen tomorrow, and that's just another day that we come across.
This voyage is taking the ship and her crew through one of the worst areas in the world for monsoon storms and swells. It also lands her in a notorious waterway for pirate attacks, the Malacca Straits. The British Progress is crossing this 500-mile stretch between Indonesia and Malaysia. She and all other vessels are targets for heavily armed thieves who pose a threat to all on board. In the last week, there have been 2 successful attacks in this area. Across the world in the last year, there have been 280.
They're quite professional, some of these lads, armed guys jumping on ships and waving AK-47s at ships' crews. Ships being hijacked, ships' crews being murdered, so you have to treat everything with caution until you're comfortable that it's not coming after you.
As night falls, 2 officers are on watch, Daniel Tulloch and Andy Plucknett. Their job, to spot any potential attack craft.
I've heard of them taking people's mobile phones and their wallets. In extreme cases, they'll kidnap the crew, they'll kidnap the ship, and they'll demand a ransom.
It is actually quite worrying because we get to see the reports of other ships being attacked by pirates, whereas you don't see that in newspapers back home. At the moment, moving a searchlight, look for any small craft that might be approaching the vessel.
Another part of the precaution is charged fire hoses, which are always pouring over the 2 sides of the ship at the back, and another one pointing right over the stern. I have my reservations about the fire hoses, when they've got guns and we've got fire hoses.
For Andy and Daniel, it's all about concentration. But can they keep the ship out of danger until morning?
At the moment, there's nothing, but you still have to keep a close eye on what is out there.
And as the journey continues, thoughts of arrival in Iraq become a reality.
War zone's never been to Iraq before, some of that is. I'm feeling slightly nervous.
Across the globe, around 50,000 merchant ships move the world's trade by sea. On them, dedicated officers and crew ensure our island nation is never without.
You walk down any high street in any town, in virtually any country, and you'll find goods that are manufactured overseas. They don't get there on airplanes, they don't get there on the backs of trucks, they get there on ships.
But it's supertankers and their crews who have one of the most challenging jobs at sea, carrying crude oil. It's dangerous, valuable, and something almost nobody could live without. This is the British Progress. She's 5 jumbo jets long and on her way to Iraq to pick up 2 million barrels of oil. That's $260 million worth.
It's a very important job. Without the oil that we carry around the world, then yeah, there'd be serious consequences.
Dawn breaks and it's all quiet on the Malacca Straits, one of the most dangerous routes in the world for pirate attacks.
There's a little fishing boat ahead there, Dan.
Small fishing boat?
Yeah, he's crossed the bow already. He's quite safe. But looks like
Last night, third officers Daniel Tulloch and Andy Plucknett kept watch across the pitch-black waters.
We just made it clear that we were keeping a good watch, and if there were any pirates out there, then they probably would have noticed. As soon as we clear the land, that will be the last of the traffic we'll see for a good couple of days until we get to Sri Lanka, then across the rest of the Indian Ocean and up to the Gulf.
Time can pass slowly on board. When the ship's 29 officers and crew are not working, the only space they have to while away the hours is their 7-floor accommodation block.
You've got to be a very adaptable and also tolerant person because of the amount of time spent in confined spaces with the same people.
As the ship sails the Indian Ocean, Daniel Tulloch is still adjusting to long sea passages. It's Daniel's first trip on a supertanker. He joined the vessel just 8 weeks ago.
I like to play the guitar because it's what keeps me occupied. I'm not really that great. So I've written a few songs. They're a bit silly. I'm not going to sing because I've not got the best voice in the world. Still improving on that one, you know, but it'll get better. You do need to get a little bit of space, get away from people sometimes. So cabin is the perfect place to do that. You come here and you can watch a movie or read or just relax. You need to be a strong person to survive at sea because you're away from home for quite a long time. I suppose when you get a little homesick, you're missing family and your friends, then for me that's when it gets a bit hard. Or
Down in the engine room, machinery is still being put back together after the ship's recent refit in a Singapore shipyard. It's a demanding job for all involved.
It can be reaching 40, 50 degrees down there, humidity 70, 80%. We've had it up to 100% down there in this trip. So it's hot, it's humid, and extremely noisy. I love the job, I love the work, I love the traveling, but I do miss my girlfriend. Apart from that, this job would be fantastic if I could go home every night.
Going back to sea has been extra tough for 4th Engineer Alan Otter. While in dock for 2 weeks in Singapore, girlfriend Natalie came to stay on ship.
It's just a really nice feeling to know you're knocking off work and that you can go up and see your girlfriend after you finish work. It's really nice, you know.
There's that extra special connection with Alan. She's just really caring and generous and just really love him.
It was the first time the couple had seen each other in 5 weeks.
When we do see each other, it's really, really exciting because the time we have, I suppose, it's short. We want to do the most that we can.
Natalie's hoping Alan will be home as soon as the ship's loaded in Iraq. But Alan's worried he'll be kept on board for another 2 months.
Things could go wrong. I mightn't get a relief and I might have to stay on until we get to Long Beach, but it's just something you've got to deal with in this job, that sometimes things don't work out well.
I think this probably will make us very strong and I will get used to it. I would never make him give up his job. At the end of the day, you've got to live your own life and stuff like that, but it's just the missing, it's the hardest thing.
On the starter's orders.
Leaving loved ones behind is difficult for everyone on a ship, so officers and crew try to keep spirits up on long voyages.
Fortunately, this trip, we've got some really good guys on board. We've all gelled together and we all get on well, and that makes the family bond better.
Okay. One time.
We've got Irish, English, Scottish, Polish, Filipino, so it's quite a mixed bunch. Like, there's different senses of humours from different places, and it's good to see that, you know.
That's 2 queens. No one speaks.
Tomorrow the ship will anchor off the United Arab Emirates after 12 days at sea. Here she'll await the go-ahead to load in Iraq. So for now, there's a little time to relax.
We run a horse racing night. It's quite entertaining once it gets going because you see the lads, you know who's backed which horse immediately as soon as it starts.
Let's get ready to rumble! Social nights like this are going to bring morale up hugely on a ship. I don't work with a lot of the deck crew, so I get to meet them, chat with them, you know, have a bit of fun, so it's enjoyable.
One Jack. We're all here together, we all work together, and there's no reason why we can't play together. And that's what we do. All over. King was the winner.
Early morning on the bridge, and Chief Officer Rob Jackson is guiding the Progress to anchor in the United Arab Emirates.
It's basically just bringing her to a controlled stop, and then we'll put the anchor down and get her to hold on.
Third Officer Andy Plucknett will be in charge of what's known as the pick.
There's a lot of terms you have to remember. You can't just say the anchor's hanging out of the hole and it's nearly in the water. There's all kinds of salty terms you have to remember, and the captain likes to hear it done properly as well.
Andy wants to become a second officer or mate, so if he gets this right, he might just impress the captain.
Progress bridge to Vauxhall.
Hello, Andy.
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
OK, Andy, if you want to get the hydraulics and everything ready and get her in gear.
Hey, Rob, opening the valve now.
Unfortunately, Andy's knocked off course right from the start.
The gear between the motor and the gypsy wheel is not completely engaging. Control to put it in and out of gear is sheared off.
Progress bridge, go ahead.
We're just sent Pimp in to get a pair of pliers because we're having to change a lever that's sheared off in our fingertips.
You've actually got her in gear now, have you?
Negative, no.
We will be able to get it in gear as soon as we get this pin back. But,
OK.
We've still got about 2 miles to run.
If Andy doesn't get things moving quickly, the ship will overshoot her parking spot.
Normally, it's such a smooth, problem-free operation that for some reason today, that bolt decided to shear off, and there's not much we can do about that.
Pressure's on now.
Able seaman Pinpin arrives back with the pliers. These are Andy's only lifeline for the starboard anchor.
Only moving a tiny bit. It doesn't look good, I'll admit, but the people that it matters to, the captain and Rob, they know it's just one of those things. Even though I do wish it hadn't happened.
Progress bridge, go ahead.
Yeah, Rob.
Well, I'm afraid it looks like we won't be able to do much with the tools we've got here.
It's a bit too tight. We can't
Really get a purchase on it with these pliers.
Just have a go and see if you can get the port anchor in gear.
It's just as well the ship's got a spare.
Progress bridge.
You can start walking her out now, please.
By the time you get her down to the bottom, we should be stopped.
OK, starting to lower now.
British Progress, Vauxhall. OK, Andy, you should be getting close to the bottom now.
OK, Rob, copy that. We'll put the brake on, the guillotine over. That's perfect, thank you both. Aside from the incident with having to change over windlasses, it went pretty well.
Andy's hands are firmly back on the tiller, but is he on the captain's radar?
Andy should be second mate. He's perfectly capable and he's ready.
After taking on fuel, the ship left for Iraq 2 days later.
There's a lot of jobs still to carry out and finish, so there's quite a lot of activity going on. with a small amount of people.
The younger lads probably have one or two reservations just because of the word Iraq and the history that goes on there.
War zones, never been to Iraq before. I'm feeling slightly nervous, not too bad, but you know, there's always going to be a worry there when you're heading into a dangerous situation like that.
My first thought was a little bit concerned, and I decided I wasn't going to phone home and tell my mum that's where I was going, so she'd panic.
It makes me a little nervous, you know, to think we're going to be so close to fighting, you know.
You have to be aware of the terrorist threat that's up there. Fortunately, the security forces there are very good at the job.
There are real risks there, otherwise there wouldn't be a naval presence. If you've never done it before, it probably is quite a daunting experience, but us old dogs have been before and we're comfortable with it.
For the Merchant Navy, it's a never-ceasing 24/7 job keeping the world stocked and supplied. And here too, on the British Progress, the journey continues. Alan Otter returned home to girlfriend Natalie as planned after the ship successfully loaded in Iraq. Andy Plucknett is still awaiting that promotion. And Daniel Tulloch has yet to master the art of singing.